I will go ahead, though, here, because I hate the silence. How about if I haven't met you before, or I haven't had the opportunity to say hello? My name is Lane. I'm the student pastor here, and I, along with several adult volunteers, help run the Forge on Wednesday nights, which is our student ministry program. So if you have a grandkid, or you know somebody who doesn't go to church and they're between the ages of or 6th grade and 12th grade, send them my way. They're going to have a lot of fun, and we're going to drink hot chocolate this Wednesday. So, everyone, I want you to hold up your phones. I know you already got it out. I want to see them. Okay, thank you. All got your phones. I want you to know that this is a very powerful tool. You can do two things with this. Number one, you can share our live stream on your Facebook wall. Who knew when Jesus said, go make disciples of all nations, it'd be that easy. You can just participate that, click a button, and there, boom, you don't even have to leave your seat. Number two, you can follow along on the YouVersion Bible app where I put all of my sermon notes and images that you can share if it feels like it speaks to you or whatever. There's instructions on the screen on how you can get there. I love doing that on Wednesday nights with my kids. It makes it really easy to just kind of pay attention, follow along with what I'm saying and all that kind of stuff. You guys look good this morning. Now, I know that I do not for the most part because I look strange. I am no stranger to strangeness, in my opinion. A lot of you probably, you see me skulking around here. It's like, there's that youth pastor in his all black and his long hair. He's weird. Yeah, I understand that. I blame my mother for the most part, but love you, Mom. But because of that strangeness, I feel like I kind of might be a little like a magnet that attracts other kind of strange people. And I've had weird experiences in my life, a lot of weird experiences with weird people. I remember graduating high school and getting ready to go on to college. There's something about the idea of just leaving high school and going and moving away that excites me. There's a lot of things. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to make new friends. I don't know. There's just all these ideas rushing through your head that things are going to happen. And I remember the most thing that I was kind of excited about, but also at the same time, there was like a nervous anticipation in my stomach, was the prospect of getting a roommate. Because that could either go one or two ways. That could be like, this is somebody that you have to be stuck with for a long time, or this is going to be some dude who's probably going to be the best man at my wedding. I don't know. We can either be best friends or we can hate each other. And I'll never forget going to Bridges Hall up to the 4th floor, to room 413, where I would meet my roommate for the very first time. I remember in Bible school, there is we're separated into two different halls. There's the boys, there's the girls. Boys are paired with boys, girls with girls. It's very obvious. So it was a very strange experience for me to walk in for the very first time and see a girl. I was just like, what is this? Is this, if I'm a part of this guinea pig experience, or like you're trying to put me with a girl for the first time, maybe I'm okay with that. I don't know. I hear a lot of people in Bible school are looking for spouses. So I was like, maybe this is Sagu just kind of set me up to succeed. But no. Upon further inspection, it was, thank you, Drew, Princess Leia, a full life-size cardboard cutout of Princess Leia, pointing her gun at me, just staring at me. It was the weirdest thing because a few things went through my mind. Like, I love Star Wars. I love the franchise. But this guy that I was soon to be living with had to like sit down and think, this is something that I want to buy. And then go on to set aside money to actually buy that. And then go look for a place that sells life-size cardboard cutouts of Carrie Fisher. And then to think, you know who's going to love this? A person I've never met and I have to live with for 6 months. And he just brings it in there. And he just lives with it. It was the weirdest thing to me. It turned out, I was like, maybe this is a weird guy. Maybe he's a normal guy who just likes Star Wars a lot. No, he was a weird dude. I understand that a lot of people like to sleep for self-defense with a knife under their pillow or a gun by their bedside. My roommate slept with mace. And I know that's confusing. I mean a mace, not Mace the pepper spray. I mean a medieval weapon that if an intruder would come in, that he would then unsheath from where it was hiding under his pillow and then bludgeon them. Weird dude. I've met a lot of weird people in my life. I remember graduating from college and moving on to Denton, where I lived for a year, Denton, Texas. And this was my first time living in an apartment complex, and I was excited about that. I still remember this apartment complex. There's a lot of weird people in apartments to begin with, so of course I would have the fortune of meeting somebody very strange. I remember it was laid out in two kind of rows. There was a building here, and they were connected. It was kind of an open space, but they were connected by a roof, and the parking lot was on either side of that. And I remember every time that I would get out of my car and go to my apartment, which was about on the right side, 4 doors down, I would always pass this lady who was always sitting on a lawn chair. She was heavier set. She was always smoking cigarettes, sitting just the first door on the left there. And I always remember I'm not one to have conversations with people. I'll give you the courtesy. I'll give you a head nod, maybe a morning, or maybe a how are you? And then you say, I'm good, how are you? Good. That's it. That's the conversations I had with people. That's what I had with this person every time I would pass her, because she was literally out there all the time. You couldn't get to my apartment without first passing her. Now I remember one of these days, parked my car with my roommate. We got out and went to go to our apartment, and I was just having like a casual conversation, one that I just have all the time. I mentioned to my roommate that I would like to go LARPing, which LARP stands for live action role play. It's where you and your other friends that are nerds dress up with foam swords and you go to the park and you hit each other. It sounds fun to me. I remember it saying, dude, I would love to go LARPing. And as I was going to put my key into the door, as coolly and calmly as possible, my neighbor, who I learned name was Mary, just leaning against the wall, exhales on her cigarette and is like, if you need armor, I got you covered. I was like, what? No one says this. This is the first conversation you have with me? If I need armor, you got me covered. I come to find out, yeah, she makes armor, like chain mail, leather mail, whatever you have the coin to afford. My roommate, my neighbor, sorry, she's not my roommate. My neighbor, Mary, had you covered. Not only did I learn that she made armor, but she made clothing for a game called Second Life. Now, Second Life, just stay with me. I know that we got a lot of just the kind of, you're a little bit older. Second Life is a virtual world on the internet that if you are tired of your first life, you can have a second one. No quest, no mission, no anything like that. It's just you existing in this virtual world. So not only did Mary, my neighbor, make armor for real people, she made fake clothing for fake people. And that's how she made her living. Also, come to find out, she had an extensive collection of swords that she didn't have any money to buy. And when I asked how she acquired them, she says, well, it's simple. I just make my own wine and I trade it for these swords. Mary, very interesting person. I learned that as you get older in life and as you keep on chugging, you're going to run into a lot of strange people. You're going to run into people who you might like, people who you don't like, people who are very annoying, people who you don't want to talk to ever again if you had the chance. And what was running through my head these past few weeks is just, what if I could tell them what I was really thinking about them? Like, how awesome would that be? How awesome would it be to, instead of keeping all these things inside, because I know, like, we as people kind of like have this courtesies with people where we just kind of just nod and pretend to listen, even when we just don't care about what they're saying. But how awesome would it be to my roommate to just say, hey, man, I am terrified to sleep in the same room with you. You as a person really scare me. You strike fear into my heart. Or to tell Mary, hey, you're probably the strangest person I've ever met in my life, and I like having these conversations with you, but sometimes you talk too long, and I just want to not have to walk around the building to get into my apartment so I can avoid talking to you. How awesome would it be to drop the courtesies? What do you think about it in the context of your own life? Like, how many of you have so badly wanted to yell at the person in the self-checkout line who has like a basket full of items and doesn't know how to scan a single one of them, and then you're just standing there with no open spots left with your stick of deodorant, and you're just like, God, please, I just want to go home. How badly would you just want to yell at them? Instead, when they turn to you feeling embarrassed at how they don't know how to work modern technology, looks at you and say, I'm so sorry, and you just say, it's fine. How badly would you just want to instead tell them how you really feel? Or instead of cowering from your neighbor as you pull up into the driveway, how badly would you say, hey, as fun as it sounds to be trapped in this endless conversation that has no point with you, I instead would like to go inside and never talk to you again. How badly, instead of just nodding along to, oh, how's your grandkids? Okay, that's nice. Or how badly would you want to tell your coworker or your boss what you really think of them? I think we can all agree that we sometimes treat our neighbor a little differently than we would like to do sometimes. And from here on out, when I say the word neighbor, I'm using the biblical Greek definition that it says a neighbor is any person with whom you live or chance to meet. Neighbors, anybody you run into. That definition covers literally everybody. And we can find ourselves treating our neighbors in a way that is less than kind for the most part. Why don't we say what we think most of the time? Why is that? Why do we seem to have to put on this courtesy, this facade of loving people? Like, as much as I wanted to yell in the face of my neighbor or anyone I run into at the grocery store, I don't do it. It got me asking the question, why? And I think it comes down to something that we are taught as children, because one of the easiest ways that you can teach children things is to put the world, like put things into perspective for them, right? To kind of make them understand what is going on, and to put it in their world. And what is a child's world? Themselves. Kids love themselves. They're the most selfish little things that you'll ever meet. They love everything. They all want it. It's all for them. They don't care about you. And if you've ever found your nephew, your niece, your child, your grandchild, whatever, doing something that they're not supposed to do, doing something that's mean to somebody else, you probably found yourself at one point in time saying something along the lines of, hey, don't do that. That's how would you like if I did that to you, right? That you're supposed to treat other people the way that you would like to be treated. See, my wife, Jolie, she just recently visited our two nephews in New Mexico. Now, one of them, the older brother, his name is Edison. He's 3 years old. He has apparently discovered that he possesses some sort of physical dominance over the younger one, Grayson, who's 1 year old. And now Jolie told me that Edison would just kind of sometimes stare at Grayson real angrily and then just pop him on the head. Just give him a little swift punch to remind him who's boss. And Jolie had to just like, how do you teach somebody that that's not okay? You have to sit down and say, Edison, listen, man, that's not nice. How would you like if others did that to you? That's not how you're supposed to treat people. How would you like if I just came along, I gave you a little pop on the head? You wouldn't like that, right? Treat others the way that you would like to be treated. Jesus puts it another way in the Gospels. He says, love your neighbor as yourself. And it makes sense in a kid's world, right? Because they're so focused on themselves. They love themselves. So when you tell them, hey, love your neighbor as yourself, treat others as you would like to be treated, it clicks with them because, they want to be treated great. That makes sense. But as kids grow up and as we have gotten older, something has shifted. It's a little bit different now. And while the words of Jesus has not changed, love your neighbor as yourself, I think that the way that we have come to understand and live it out has. Because I believe there's an implication that we are just flat out missing, that we're choosing to ignore, that we're just glancing over. And I want to go over that for a little bit. So let's look at the text more closely. If you have your phones out, your Bible, you can scroll along with the YouVersion app. Or if you have an old school Bible, you can flip the pages to Matthew chapter 22. We're going to throw the verses on the screen as well. But Jesus at this point in the story was approached by some Pharisees who were some dudes who were just so good at knowing what the religious law says, but kind of really not good at following out what it says. And wanting to kind of stump Jesus at this point in time, came up to him and said, hey, what's the greatest commandment? We're going to look at Jesus' response. So if you have your Bibles open or whatever, I want you to just give me a thumbs up. See, that's a little trick I do so I can drink coffee. That's also a trick because joke's on you, it's water. Okay, let's look at Jesus' reply. Starting in verse 37, he said this, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. A second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. See, I mentioned that as we've gotten older, there's an implication in that verse that we are missing in that second commandment. And I believe if we continue to withhold it, we're never going to fully love people the way that we should, or the way that Jesus has intended us to love your neighbor as yourself. Did you catch it in there? It's so small. To love your neighbor as yourself. This verse implies that we have to love ourselves. Which yet, like in a kid's world, this is easy. But as you get older, in the stress of life, the careers, family choices, all of that factors in. And sometimes loving yourself isn't as easy as it once was. And with suicide rates and depression, anxiety orders being at an all-time high, I think that it's hard to argue against that fact. And I want to be very transparent and honest with you this morning in hopes that you can also be transparent and honest with yourself. If I were to live out that second commandment, to love my neighbor as myself, as Jesus intended it to, I would be a horrible neighbor. I as a person, am very self-critical. I'm too hard on myself. I have a lot of negative thoughts, a lot of negative self-talk, a lot of hatred for myself that sometimes crops up from time to time. And I find myself after preaching on Wednesday nights or driving in the car or laying in bed, just beating myself up, man. Oftentimes, a voice in the back of my head will pop up, always say, you're not doing anything that matters. You are a failure. You are not accomplishing God's will for your life. You'll never get to where you want to be. You should have said this, done that, talked to this person, invited them. Thoughts are endless. And I can be my own worst enemy. And if I were to truly love my neighbor like I love myself, I don't think that anyone would really ever want to really live near me. And I think if you were being real and honest with yourself this morning, that you can probably admit that there are areas in your life in which you find that it is hard to sometimes love yourself as well. Whether you criticize your abilities at your job or you focus on what you don't like when you look in the mirror, we all have that voice in our heads that occasionally pop up and will tell us the things that are so badly wrong in our lives. But that's not the way that it should be, right? That's loving our neighbor even though we're neglecting to love ourselves. Because see, the Pharisees in this passage are very good at pretending. They're very good at putting on a front and doing the right things even though their motives are all wrong. And actually in the next chapter, Jesus says, they're nothing but whitewashed tombs. You're nothing but a coffin, man. It's pretty and polished on the outside, but on the inside, it's full of bones and death and decay. And if I'm looking at this passage and being honest with myself, there are times when I'm no better than a Pharisee. And on the outside, I have no problem of following the command of loving my neighbor as myself. But when it comes down to it, if I'm not even loving myself, am I truly doing what Jesus commanded? I never once spoke to my roommate the way that I speak to myself, even though I probably would have liked to sometimes. I never once treated Mary with the same kind of brutality that I can sometimes treat myself with. But here I find myself on occasion just beating myself up over and over again. My own worst enemy. So what do we do here? What change has to happen in us in order for us to fully flesh out this commandment that we've heard all of our lives to the best of ourselves, not just to love other people, but to also love ourselves? I think there is a domino effect that has to take place. See, I don't think that we can truly love our neighbors if we don't first love ourselves. And I don't think that we can really love ourselves until we understand that God loved us first. 1 John 4:19 says we love each other because he loved us first. If you're taking notes or you're sharing stuff on your phone or Facebook, I want you to write this down. Loving others starts with the understanding that Jesus loved you first. Loving others starts with the understanding that Jesus loved you first. I think that we have done ourselves a disservice at times. When it comes to the gospel, I think that we have generalized the gospel so much that we have sometimes forgotten to personalize it. And I think that's important. I want to repeat it. We have generalized the gospel so much that we've forgotten to personalize it. See, we all know John 3:16, right? For God so loved the world, gave his one and only son, that whoever believes in him wouldn't perish but have everlasting life. For God so loved the world. Man, it's easy for us to get that. It really is, because I can wrap my head around that. Any sweeping generalization I can get. I can understand that for so God loved the world, because I don't see the faces of the people in the world. When you see a crowd, you don't see the individuals in the crowd. You don't see the problems. You don't see the struggles. You just see a group of people. So it's easy for me to say, for God so loved the world, but for me to be able to say, for God so loved me. For God so loved Lane. That's hard. Because I know myself, man. I know the way that I think. I know the things that I've done. I know my past. I know my sins. I know the way that I've treated other people, the way that I wanted to treat other people. I know my struggles, my failures, my shortcomings. So why on earth would anyone have this sort of love for me? Knowing what I am, what would anyone see in me that really is worth loving? And I think that's why we struggle so much when it comes to the concept of grace. I think we so badly want to work to get better. We want to work to clean up our act, to make ourselves presentable, to make ourselves, at least in our own eyes, valuable enough for the price that Jesus paid for us on the cross. But the beauty of grace is that we'll never be able to do it. We'll never be good enough to earn our own salvation. And even while knowing that, while knowing who I am, the failures that I've had, the mistakes I'm still going to make, salvation is what Jesus gives us freely. that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. It is a love that is so radical, so reckless, so incomprehensible that when you once start to grasp a hold of it, you will have no power over how quickly it begins to change every single part of your being. And when you begin to understand that not only for God so loved the world, but for God so loved Sadie, or God so loved Nick, for God so loved Harry. When you begin to understand that, you'll fall so deeply in love with the person of who Christ is that you'll have no trouble fulfilling the first commandment of love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your strength. And you will naturally, being full of that love, cannot help to love people that you meet. Cannot help for that to overflow into every single person you come into contact with your neighbor. So if there's any sort of action that I want you to take away from this morning, it would be this. I want you to let the love of God change the way that you see yourself. Let the love of God change the way you see yourself. I want you to wake up every morning, remind yourself that Jesus decided that you were worth dying for. And I know that it's Christmas time. I know we tend to focus our attention on other people. We want to give. We want to do this. And a message about loving yourself this time of year seems odd. And I struggle with this for the months leading up to this. I knew this is what God wanted me to talk about. I many times just said, God, that's weird. Let me talk about Jesus being born. Everyone knows that. It's easy. But if you really want to start loving people the way that God intended it, you'll first start to see yourself as valuable as Christ saw you. It still sees you. I don't know who needed this message this morning, but I really feel very strongly that somebody in this room does. And I believe that when the gospel of Jesus starts to renew itself in your hearts personally, that there is nothing that we could do to start to contain what God is going to start doing in our congregation, in our city, in our personal lives. It will change you. Prayer partners, I would like you to come forward. And